Okay, hi and welcome back to part 3. Well, I hope you liked the first and second part. As you can see, they're both kind of like rolling into each other, and effectively from the perspective that you had prior to part 1, to the perspective that you're developing, to the re-challenge of that development of your perspective through the internal world and the world that goes on around you, even whilst touching on the taboos of conspiracy. There's a lot of information out there, so we've basically brought it all together and effectively created a nice, tidy little package for it. And that is what we've done here. Effectively, in part 3, we're going to be looking at the basics of business and politics. Now, it's not actually a hot topic for everybody. Fair play. For those who it is, and for those who are, shall we say, just venturing into the realms of business and politics, I believe this will be an ideal starting platform for you. There is a supporting document that comes with it, and it's got spaces in it for you to actually jot notes in or write your own interpretation of it. Yeah? But as we move through, you'll find that the actual presentation itself is self-explanatory. Yes? Excuse me. So, looking at our menu, we can click on the information. Effectively, this package is designed to assist with the basic development of your understanding of what is happening in and around businesses, or, for the terms of the other side, around politics. We're only exploring particular model structuring that are principally the same across the board and ties in with Shadow Crimes Management's Phase 2 business. It also ties in with Phase 1, but it's more towards Phase 2. And then the politics will go into the specialist phase. However, it may serve you well as a directional model for later use. There it will. So that leads us into the third and final paragraph, which is also designed for the purpose to assist the younger generation and unemployed to both find their way into a job role which may interest them based on the division itself and not the skill base. Okay? The skill base within each job role is something different. And there it is. Sometimes you can work on a general basis, like for instance, with myself and all these packages, my research capabilities, my skills, my academic background and my economic background, I can apply myself to pretty much anything. And you may find there are a few of you out there who are the same. However, a lot of the time we find that the encouragement is to choose a particular avenue to go down and then focus on that avenue, so it basically draws the best out of you. Yeah? So basically, with business, we're having a look inside a business and the marketplace itself, and then with politics, we're going to have a look at the political structure and the future. So by the time we've finished, both of these two will form into one avenue. Very well. They both have separate documents, as I was just mentioned, more so politics, because the subject in itself, even in its basics, is much larger. Yeah? So let's crack on it. We can click on there. You can either click on any of the navigation, or you can scroll up and down, or just simply click on the page anywhere to move this along. That's more so for those who have not actually used PowerPoint before. And this one is a standalone package. Okay. Construction and divisions, SMEs, M&Es. Construction and divisions, whilst this would be for much larger organisations, it does lend itself well if you are a small business looking in and wanting to know the next steps forward from a structural point of view. Other more in-depth information is reserved for later stages, otherwise it would So this serves itself well for the main presentation for the larger organisations. And effectively what it also does is it lends itself well for those who are, shall we say, beginning to learn about business. Yeah? Learn about the job market, as in industry, learn about economics. For those who've, shall we say, who have left the education and have become a little lost in some ways, a little bit sceptical as to why businesses do what it is they do. Yeah? It seems that it can mystify some people sometimes, seems very daunting. But the objective of this is to actually show you that it's not as bad as what some people may think it is. Yeah? So we'll show you the construction and divisions of businesses. A learning organisation, or rather the processes of learning within organisations. Yeah? It's very much the same things we were saying in part 1. It's all about learning. And that learning helps us to integrate better with whether it be society, whether it be on a smaller scale with our social circles. It helps us with our faiths, if you've chosen a faith of some description. And it helps us with choosing a job. Okay? Again, we draw on our strengths and then apply that into the business. And then the business in itself then draws on that employee pool base and then reapplies it back in a context where it's suitable for its industry. Yeah? Marketplace and cycles. So we're looking at the marketplace, again, only in its basics. We could really blow this out, we could. And we'll have a look at the cycles. Yeah? International trading. So it's at this point that we show the comparable likenesses between markets, but it's also a linking point into the final parts of politics. Yeah. Okay. Construction and divisions. Categories. That old familiar symbol. We can use these symbols in loads of different ways. As you'll have discovered throughout, it's just a good way of being able to structure what would normally be just simple random data. Yeah? Or otherwise just a lot of information on a page, and we can bring it into a visual representation of what it is we mean. Yeah? In this case, currently this is the maximum number of operating business categories. Right? And like I said, in stage 1 and 2, under the management, we have a look at economic statuses and employees. Whereas in the stage, within the actual stages of Shadow Crowns, it doesn't emphasise these points. This is the other side to it all. Yeah. So the category itself is hobby, project or starter. We cover that part. However, on the other side, yeah, we've got 0 to 10 employees, classified as a local business. It may only be operating in one town, or city, or village. Yeah. Small to medium enterprises. It composes of between 10 and 250 employees. Multiple branches, one country, it's a national operation. For those who are still not certain as to what that means, effectively, I've opened up my local business in, let's say, in the city, it's down the road, say, Bude. Then all of a sudden, I decide that demand is there, so I go up to Barnstaple, open one there, then one over in Hull, then one over in Birmingham, one in Manchester, and so on. And I become a national operation. Yeah. Multinational enterprise, or MNE as they're referred to, which is 250 plus employees, also has international connectivity. Now you understand the local, you understand the national, replicate those across different countries. So the head office, let's say, could be here in the UK, wherever, it makes no difference. It could be here in the UK, but then it's branched out across into, say, China, into various different cities and states, countries within Europe, France, Spain, and the rest of it go with it, along with America, Canada, and Mexico. So you actually become an international organisation or a multinational enterprise. Now, there's one last one. As we progressively develop towards full globalisation, a fourth will emerge. Now, whilst a fourth will emerge, it is emerging. Yeah? And that, change the design slightly, is more commonly known, well, it's becoming known, not commonly known, it's becoming known as a multi-matrix enterprise, which effectively is the same as number 3, but utilises movement of employees, but will also be autonomous by branch or by region. Some businesses are structured in such a top-down design, whereas everything happens up above, all the policies and procedures, everything happens from that place, and then cascades, and everybody has to do the same in a uniform fashion. Yeah. However, much like the design itself, let's say this is head office. In some instances, the current model, or some models, policies and procedures here, instructions cascade down to the other branches, and they have to do what's expected up here. In the newer models that are now emerging, they still have the policies and procedures, they still have their mission, yeah? But what they're doing is saying, right, you have control over what you're doing, this is what we would like to see happen, how you do it is up to you, as long as it falls within the side of the law. Yeah? So what they're doing is giving this branch, and this branch, and this branch more autonomy over what they're actually doing. Yeah? Okay, as you can see, it's becoming self-explanatory. Globalisation. Whilst that being the case, let's have a look at some components. Scaling it back, hence the reason why we've got rid of the map. We're looking at this from a singular point of view, from one country to one region to one city to one business. All businesses have their consumer, as you saw a moment ago. A business contributes towards population growth, eventually national stability, contributes towards infrastructure, and even entertainment, depending on the business type. Now, bear in mind though, I've placed these in, they're not fixed, they're just examples. There could be another 12 different ones of these. Yeah. But for example purposes, we've just stuck with some of the aspects of what a business can be contributing towards, or is required, is requiring. So then moves on to the startings of the business. So let's say, for instance, you're a retail outlet, you have an outlet. You have your employees, and you have your head office. As you can see, there's a dual arrow here. We could have it the other way around, but it just wouldn't make sense. And not only that, it wouldn't fit in with what's to come. So we have our outlet, which links in to this sphere. We have our employees, which we draw through, and then they're organised by the head office, or employed by the head office. Employees are split into two. Again, quite rudimentary, but basic. The basic understanding is employees are either white collar or blue collar. Okay. Blue collar is usually, like we saw in part 2, are those around about the bottom rungs, the everyday employee, the basic front end of the business, or the general grafters, and so on and so forth. It's not meant to be derogatory, it's just a way of, shall we say, identifying the actual structure itself and the employee within the structure itself. As a matter of fact, it could be denoted as blue collar employees are equally, if not greater, greater in importance than some of the white collars. Yeah. So don't Don't go venturing down the negative path thinking, oh, blue collar less than them and looking down on us. It's not always the case. Yeah. And a white collar could be anything from, like, say, I don't know, the research and development, yeah, from supervisors upwards. In any particular order, there's no particular order to this. It's everything that's not the front end. Yeah, it's not the labour part, yeah, or the laborious, or the task-based, which is related to this. So blue collar is this way, and white collar is that way. Yeah? Okay. Now, this is not everything. This gives you an example. This is the production line, and from raw materials through to manufacturing, product, distribution, to its outlet. Employees are linked in. Head office dealing with raw materials and sourcing of it and making sure that this chain makes its way to here. Because that's not everything, and some businesses do indeed, or should I say are indeed, multifaceted. Some do produce products and some have services. Some companies with a service see it as a product, but by the time you've finished and the construct is on its way to completion, what you'll actually have on the other side is other resources which can assist with research and development, which is perhaps manufacturing, the service itself, whatever is being produced, and then its connection, its connectivities, its sales, all that type of stuff, which is the next step towards the outlet, the final product, the final service. Yeah. To make all this lot work, we have the HR, which is the Human Resource Department, and our Training Department. We'll have a look at these ones a little bit, specifically the training one, a little bit later in. But another two components to the whole business itself. So in general terms of speaking, venturing into a business, this is generally what you're actually looking at. Yeah? And it's pretty much a universal model. When you're starting off hobby size, yeah, you'll have something like this. You'll have a central nervous system, i.e. a computer with a lot of your stuff on it, or backed up into hard copies and things like that. And if you're growing with 1 or 2 employees, you might have 1 or 2 employees tasked to do 1 or 2 of these little bits, but it may not seem that way. Yeah? And each one of you will do each of the jobs. And as you grow, they turn into a division. So each one is then able to handle exclusively a specific task. And this is the type of thing, when you're entering into economics, that you're looking at, is fitting in to one of these areas. Remember, without any of these areas, when you get to a large size business, without any of these areas, the business is not going to work properly. Hence the reason why we say that everybody is equally as important as the next, because with a missing cog within a clock, the clock's not going to work properly, is it? It might be able to function in some ways, but it's not going to be able to function properly. So everybody makes it work from this point through to here and to gain the final product. Right, I'm shot by the competitor because the competitor is effectively the same. It is another outlet, it's another business. You know, everything from here right through to the marketplace, and everybody makes that work. Then you have your consumers, and then we go back through the marketplace and everything else that's in it. In this case, I've placed in a few examples such as jobs, tourism, digital marketplace. So this could be a physical retail outlet, but then the physical retail outlet may actually have a digital presence. You know, travel, sourcing, so this part here, so other resources, and retail. So it's all of this lot here, competition, all of this lot here, all in this marketplace. And what we've done is just drawn out some with actual key components. Then we have the other one, which is our part of our next topic, so you'll see why now that the next is business and politics. Whilst politics does not have an exclusive access or has the right to tell businesses what to do exclusively within its entirety, they do have an involvement, more so based on, shall we say, laws, based on policies to be able to help a country grow. But again, that's the second part, so we're not going to go into that part now. Just be certain that politics has an involvement within business, but not an exclusive one. Yeah? Law is the main part. Yeah? And some of the policies. That in itself, as you can see here, there's a little red disc on the side of it, which then creates that globalization through the international marketplace. So effectively, the involvement of politics, shaping of businesses, shaping in the marketplace, and then effectively connecting the two marketplaces together to create globalization. So everything about business and economics explained in one little graph, but again, it's just the basics. If you want to extend on that, then there you go. There's loads for you to work with. Then you can create your own, change and add in your own little titles if you want, here, there and everywhere. But if you're interested in any of these parts here, then all you do is you focus your attention towards them divisions, and you style your learning, your skill base, and identify what industry you want to be in, and then go for it. Yeah. But as we can see here, there's always going to be help to progress things on. Okay, so we'll pull them other parts away. May seem like we're skirting through it, we're moving through quickly, and in some ways I am, because again, it is self-explanatory. The document itself has a few bits in there also, along with this video to pad it out just a bit more and walk you through it. But also within the document, we also have a few spaces, again, that you can place in either some of the notes that you've got from this presentation, or what you've learned as you're moving through. Yeah. Okay. Let's strip away one half of it at least. It's all pretty much the same. Helps the eye focus a bit more. In this case, we'll have a look at human resource management. It sounds quite ominous in some ways, but as the years have passed by, humans have been seen as a resource, as we were saying before. It's a key component within the business. So you are, in turn, a resource. And let's see you as a resource because they're paying you for something. So there is a trade, there's an acquisition. Yeah? You're giving them your time, your skill, your understanding, and they're paying you for it. So therefore you become a resource to them. And a valuable one at that. Yeah? Now, some organisations, depending on how big they are, and depending on the model, as we were saying before, with the 3 categories, and then the 4, it depends on how the organisation is structured. In this case, we've gone for the first one, whereas head office has a resource department, and it cascades all its instructions out, across all its employees. And we could put loads of different arrows out, but it would make it look really messy. So we have 2 arrows here, distributes it out to its employees, which then translates across all its other divisions. Now, within other organisations, I've placed unions there because then that in itself represents the developing multinational enterprises, where they're actually giving businesses or branches more autonomy over what they're actually doing. And yes, even I have to, shall we say, nipple twist somebody and say, it's a way of actually saving money. Yeah? So effectively, but it's a good thing, so don't get me wrong, it's a good thing, because what that does is it moves the authority or the autonomy away from the head office. Yeah? It gives the employees keep pointing out here, the employees a bit more of a voice. And then, based on the same hierarchical system, yeah, through the union reps, they gather all that information. They then talk to head office and central human resourcing. Okay, so it's not entirely a bad thing. It makes sure that everything's working. So there's always going to be a form of resourcing department for employees. We start looking at it. Now we start looking at the employees, the employment, participation, which again, as we've been mentioning throughout, is your participation. What effects you have within the organisation, what you're contributing towards the organisation. So making sure you've got the right skill set, even if it's in a general format, and being able to understand, in this case, what's being presented, yeah, is an important thing. But again, participation, not sitting around, not lolling about, not trying to avoid your responsibilities of what you're being paid for, the time that you're being paid for. We can go down, we can put this across in many different ways. We can. In this case, your participation moves into the avenues, the post responsibilities. You can see how each one is interlinking with the next now. Your post responsibilities will be based on your actual skill base, will be based on your understanding of the mission of the business. And not only that, in later stages, the laws that cover your role. In this case, now we bring in, so I'm kind of skipping ahead of myself here, so now we bring in the direct and indirect laws, yeah, which everybody is subject to. Yes, speculatively speaking, I know the law's subject to itself also, but that's for those who are venturing off a little bit. But we bring in the training again because there's also ethical standards. There are also particular codes of conduct, yeah, towards teaching people what is being taught. Now, for instance, the last two packages, the last two parts in this one, making sure that the information that's being presented to you is done in a fair and even fashion. Yeah. It's not pulling anybody down, but if it does, it gives justifiable reason. So, evidence. Yeah. And it's the same with the business. If a business is to create some sense of policy, yeah, it has to be fair, it has to be ethical, it has to be suitable, yeah, without breaching another person's rights, and so on and so forth. So again, this is your politics. Direct and indirect laws. The law may not directly apply to you, it may apply to another business, but it's then how they engage. So remember, in the marketplace, it's how they engage in the terms of competition with your organisation, and vice versa. And then the internal is these three P's. So by the time we're finished, it creates this is the head part of the actual business. Yeah? Construction of the law, or distribution, dispensing of the law. Head office, in the terms of its central business model, responds to this and makes sure that, for instance, environmental side of things are taken care of. Human resourcing, make sure that it's all formulated into an appropriate fashion, and the training team tells everybody about it and teaches them. Yeah. Let's bring back up the rest of the model again. Shadow out a few bits. I'm starting from our laws and politics. So again, more about the conduct. There it is. In this case, the style, modelling of a business, competition, what type of missions, yeah, is it ethical, is it suitable, and so on and so forth. Yeah, competition. Generally, it revolves around competition and the fair treatment of others. Yeah. Organisation vision. So again, from the law comes into the mission. What are they trying to achieve? In this case, how are they going to achieve it? What type of impacts? Corporate social responsibility. So you can see now why we've brought the law in first, because we've got the mission and how they're going to achieve it, and corporate social responsibility, which has happened within the last 5 to 10 years. Yeah, it's been brought around by, shall we say, the development of the unions from the 1700s through to the emergence of human resource departments and the refinement of their job role to create corporate social responsibility. I believe, yeah, corporate social responsibility, corporate conscience, basically the corporate conscience, is a part of the citizenship within the organisation. Social performance. It also works by the time you've worked within 2 parts or 3 parts. Citizenship also applies to how the organisation treats the customers. Yeah, so it's all a cascading effect. A sustainable, responsible business. A form of integration of a self-regulating mechanism with a business's business model, which observes and responds and adheres to ethical issues and standards of practice, which is coherent with the law external to it. Right? May also extend to being able to contribute to the development of social attitudes and norms within societies. So it's all a rolling effect from one side through to another side, and then with their international markets, it's from one to another, and then loops back around again. See how we really could break this apart. Yeah, attitude and behaviour. So effectively, the CSR, the corporate social responsibility, influences the attitude and behaviour. Yeah, this is then taught through the training, yeah, bolstered by human resourcing, based on its source. Yeah. However, it is applicable, as I've placed here, and it is not a mistake, it is applicable to everybody. Yeah. Just remember it as how you treat others. If you've treated them poorly, then what would you expect you're going to get in return? As we pointed out in part 1, it's all measurable, it's all the same, pretty much the same across the board. Right? And we can work this all on a local level, and then it's replicated right throughout should we say, regions, national and international. Within this part is loyalty. By the time you've built the head and you've worked through the first 4 parts of the local part, then yeah, you'll start to see the loyalty increase because of how you're treating people. A return custom and consumerism, based on the consumerism. Okay, well, back again. Making it work. Well, this time we're going to trim it back again. And procedural mechanisms. Function of the knowledge base. In this particular one, the knowledge base itself could be defined as being here. But we've placed it here. Why? Because when you've taken the law out and everything else out and placed your main parts here, like we saw in the beginning, employees, whether they're for human resourcing or training or even back to the head office, the employees are the hub of the knowledge. The employees are the functionings of the business. Yeah? Hence the reason why we call it procedural mechanisms. So this is where all the knowledge in itself is stored. Hence the reason why you're called a resource, because you have, should we say, an explicit and intimate understanding of how that job is working. Practical, applicable understanding. Okay, now we move actually into the human resourcing part. It gains 2 parts of our next acronym. That's organisation strategy, which is its mission, and the business's mission, as we point out here. and employment or contract type. And that's the reason why we've kept law in the picture and kept head office in the picture, because once the head office has defined what its mission is, yeah, then it's left to the human resourcing to sort out the strategy and actually how to roll that model out. Yeah? So hence the reason why you hear a lot of bachelor's degrees in administration, master's degrees in business and administration, doctorates and so on and so forth, all dealing with strategy. Yeah? Understanding the workforce, which becomes a knowledge hub in itself, as I was saying before. So these three in total makes the knowledge hub. Starts from here, there's all three. Yeah. So they're translating the mission, which then is distributed throughout. And also, based on the law, it's the types of contracts, or even the contract content. Is it fair? Are you asking too much of an employee? Are you expecting too much in return as an employee? And so on and so forth. What is being asked of each party? Is it fair? Are you getting the minimum wage, for example? And so on and so on and so forth. And do you have a pension? And yeah, all kinds of types of contracts. 0 hour being another one, in a hot topic. Then we have training. This is where the skill base comes in, or the internal. It could even be external. Right? The skill base itself, you've entered into the company, and sorted out the skill base, you're happy with everything that's going on, and what they're actually doing now is introducing you to your division, wherever it is you may be. It could even be within the training division itself, who knows. We've placed skill base internal. Training also is applicable to itself, because in some instances, some businesses will actually have their own training division, their own way of actually saying, right, this is what we expect, this is how we expect you to do it. Some companies don't have a training division, they just pay for one-off external training, so they invite people in and then deliver the training for them, to make sure all of this lot works. So it's an ad hoc cost, as opposed to being a permanent cost or an absolute cost. It's all a running cost. Yeah. Next two parts we've brought back in, head office and outlet, because by the time we've finished with these three, working this system out here, it will all lead to retention and reputation. Whether it's the employees, the head office is employing, or whether it's the customer. So you've got the staff and the marketplace. If all goes well, based on the reputation, you have increased interest. Again, applicable to either the purchase of products and services or people for employment. All being said is poetry in motion. Alrighty, scaling back again, just a touch more. Professionalism. By the time you started piecing all of this together, this is what you're actually looking at. Professionalism, the level of professionalism. Professionalism from your involvement, and what that actually leads to, the impression that you give, the impression that you make. It's not external, just external. Yeah, it's also internal. So if head office really wants to be pins in the backsides, let's say for instance, and then employees don't like that, then they're going to do one of two things, aren't they? They're either going to retaliate or bagger off and go and find a job elsewhere. Simple, isn't it? One of two things. So professionalism, taught through the training to the employees, but is applicable for everybody. It's the impression that you give from your involvement. The impact. So again, we're evolving from the involvement. Yeah, it's the impact. The impact is due to your attitude and behaviour. Communication. Without it, for me, I believe this is the actual key part. This is the key element, because without it, these arrows in this design, we can just happily say that these blue lines and red ones and white ones, all of them, will begin to fade. What that basically means then is the business begins to break apart. As with the red lines, which is our external one, if the business, no matter how good the business may be, if it fails to communicate externally and properly, whether it's here, here, or up here, then again, it will just eventually break apart. Knowledge and awareness. I've highlighted the training side of things because this division needs to be aware of this. This awareness then transfers onto the employees, and all the way through. Yeah. So it's picking your right type, the right level of professionalism, the type of impact that you want to make. You must communicate, because without it, it all breaks apart. So pick your type of communication, yeah, and knowledge. Again, communication could be anything from not only verbal, but your internal digital communication, yeah, the way you interact with each other. So pick them wisely. Alrighty then. Influencing forces. External and internal. So when looking at business, looking at constructions and divisions, it's never just about internal. There's always external as well. And a lot of the time the external part is the greater part, yeah, because without that external influences, then you wouldn't know which way to steer yourself. Yeah? Internally it becomes equally as important, because then at the end of the day it keeps your business together and keeps it functioning. So in this case, our first three, management institutions such as the Chartered Management Institution. Okay. In line with that is applicable to, but then at the same token it's in line with it, is trainers, particularly unions, human resource management, industry organisational support. So, as we see here, Chartered Management Institution, or Chartered Institution for Personnel Development, yeah, which is this part here. Both of them can be applied to it. Tribunals they need to be aware of, and the same with unions. Yeah. And the same with trainers based on conduct. And they also benefit from the CIPD. There are others. There are other applicable training courses. It's not necessarily needed, but it's good to have. The law in itself, again, as we were saying, is about the employment, it's about the contract, it's about the conduct, it's general competition, how they go about things. Like, for instance, within the pestle model. Some of you may already know about the pestle model, or the PET model. Pestle model being political, economical, societal, technological, environmental, and law. Yeah? It's the impact that this business has from a pestle point of view, which then is applicable, again, on the inside of the business, internal to the business, based on its detailing. Is the detailing of that contract going to achieve that? So it's like we can turn these into questions now. So not only are the key points, yeah, questions. Industry support. Again, this is where things start to loop back. Right? So it's other unions. What are other unions doing? And then in line with the CIPD, we've got human resource development. In line with them industry standards again. So each one, whilst it being external, is relevant internal. There's obviously going to be more of them externally to the business than there internally to the business, because they're compacting it all down and creating one singular division, okay, which is coherent with many different elements from here. As you can see there, industry standards, qualifiers, industry type. For instance, I've put an example in the document, health and safety, the HUC. Over the years, has played a part in organisational organic development, yeah, as in human development, health and safety, for instance, manual lifting. Yeah. So they would fit underneath here. And then you would have a health and safety executive or officer inside the business, whether it's a trainer or not, or more than likely will be part of the training team, and will help towards, shall we say, manual labour. Lifting goods properly, putting them down properly, where to put stuff, types of fire extinguishers, types of fire alarms, fire it, and so on and so on and so on and so forth, even within food preparation. Networking organisations, industry supporters go as far as things like the Chambers of Commerce, for instance, and breakfast clubs, the IOD being another one, LinkedIn, yeah, loads of different networks. By the time you've finished gleaning all the information from the external, from based on what you're actually doing here, it will help you towards developing your policies and procedures, or in some companies, an employee handbook. So it saves having to repeat it all the time if an employee forgets, because it's a lot of information to take in on the first instance. There'll be an employee handbook there, and well, so you can always refer back to it. I've known a couple of organisations that have them. So by the time you're finished, Merlin loves to grow tulips, or he loves to grow businesses. Can't offer my genius all. And learning. Alrighty then. As mentioned in one or two of the other videos, specifically the first one, bit of an advocate towards learning. Learning is not necessarily always just about taking in information per se. It's about how you take the information in. Now, when it comes down to learning, I've learned a great deal over the years. I've gone through a lot of the avenues within business, ranging right from working as a volunteer in charity shops, working on the ground level from pushing a brush to doing a bit of plastering on walls. Great here, but I can do it. Joinery, roofing, abattoirs, bit of taxiing, bus driving, all the way right up to directorship levels. Now, that becomes more important, not about me boasting or bragging about what I can and can't do. It's more about what we aim to achieve and how we do that. Like, for instance, all my learning has contributed towards these three parts. Yeah, the presentation of these three parts, albeit the basics, the foundational stuff. I have to start from somewhere. However, all of that within itself is nothing compared to basically how you actually learn that information. So first and foremost is your pragmatism, is actually getting involved, is participating, not being frightened of taking on board something new. Yeah? More so if it's actually relevant. And the way we do things like this is, in this case, we highlight three elements. Excuse me. Okay, we can revolve this around our past, our part 2, as in like the Vitruvian Man's chakras. So there's all part here, there's varying stages. In this case, the first one being visual learning. So some people actually prefer to learn visually, to see. Like, for instance, you're watching this video. Yeah? So you learn by actually watching. Auditory. You may actually have this running, but you're more listening to it than anything else. Yeah? And then perhaps jotting down notes and whatnot. The kinesthetic learner learns best by feeling or experiencing. So pragmatist. Getting involved. It's getting out there. And in a manner of speaking, I am that type of person myself. So you know to learn that. And a lot of my learning has come from getting involved. So it's knowing and understanding how to apply the science. So the appliance of science. Yeah, what does it say? So the appliance of science. But again, it's required for me to do it both visually and auditorily. Yeah. But everybody's, as it says there, we're all unique to one extent or another in how we learn, for what we want or need to learn. Yeah. Alright. Next one. Much in the same way, each organisation is different from another in what it needs to be taught or needs to teach. Okay? It's finding the best ways of being able to deliver that training, deliver that message, that instruction on how to do the job. Now, this is from others, and what they've done is they've done a grading scale within this familiar design again, but they've done it upside down in the form of charts. Because effectively here, reading, how much do we remember based on how much we learn or how we learn, 10% of how much we remember from what we learn is done through just simply reading. Yeah? Because it's a lot of information to take in one go, so the brain only processes so much of that information. Hence the term repetition is the mother of all success. So you read it, and you read it again. Yeah? And then more and more and more information goes in. And you remember more. And then we start climbing up the ladder to watch demonstrations such as this one. What I'm actually doing is presenting you with something to read. You're listening to me talk about it. You're seeing these images. The pictures are also moving. And I'm giving a demonstration. But then we can climb up a bit further because I'm actually teaching you about the activity itself. So from an academic point of view, in the terms of what you're either about to do or what you are doing, yeah, I'm teaching the activity. Simulating the activity in itself, well, we have to kind of stop at teaching the activity, because simulating the activity is going to be a little on the difficult side now. That's where you come into the mix. Yeah, that's where you, within the kinesthetic learning part, is to get involved. Your participation is now required. In part 2, I did a glass test, yeah, which is a form of tactile sensory test. So that's getting involved and participate in the actual activity itself. So these two, they're about the same. So from all of this, I've done all of these by walking through my path. On my path, I've gone through all these different little industries. I've learned from NVQ levels 3 through to 5, through H&Ds, right up to mastery, because I've participated. Yeah, I've used all the senses to be able to learn what it is I know, and to be able to apply what it is I know. So the appliance of science. Yeah. However, whilst this being the case, and some people would say there's the touch and that, and so there's got the 5 senses, hence the reason why I've placed the 5 stars there, 5 senses. The part that I believe is missing is the part that I says earlier. And the part that I was talking about was communication, wasn't it? So there's that vocal one. Yeah? 6. So there's actually 6. Communication. So whilst you've got your sense of smell and all the rest that goes with it, the senses, such as, for instance, if it's applicable to an industry, the example being smell and taste can be related to industries such as food and drink, alcoholic drinks, soft drinks and hot beverages, savoury, sweet and hot and cold foods. So there's your other 2 to make you 5 up. Yeah? 2 to make you 5. The 6th one is your ability to communicate. It's the vocal side of things. This is why I say now it's relevant when you start looking back at the chakra systems. Or chakra system. Yeah? Is that without that communication, particularly this one here, yeah, and the watching the demonstration based on what it is I'm doing, it's going to be quite difficult. So, verbal, hear words, and teaching an activity. So it becomes more relevant. Yeah? So, the importance of communication. Speak with people. Okay, moving on. To some, this may be a little awkward. To others, it is natural ways and means of understanding. As we did in part 2 once again, so again now we're beginning to see the relevance. Everything is beginning to come together in what's known, and it does form part of pseudoscience, however it's beginning to gain more prominence. Yeah? It's becoming more widely understood and more accepted, because within neurolinguistics, yeah, NLP has two parts, two distinct functions to it, and forms a big part of the brain or the learning, and is contributory to the past millennia of neurological, physiological, and psychological, or psychological and physiological development. Now, the image below, again, is hypothetical. What we've done is taken these three here and placed them into one little graph. Now, it's not scientific or mathematical in the terms of having numbers, it's just more of a stimulus. Yeah? And creation point, nature, nurture, and level or height of awareness. In your height of awareness, E4, which you'll find within the actual conspiracy side of stuff that I did a while back. And some of those who have been following me through will remember this as well. No. So the intelligence range, potential ranges. Yeah. So we have the normal range based on nature. So we start, and then with basically nurturing, we can go move up a step. Now some people would say, "Wow, that's the limitation." I say everybody's got a limit. You know, you can only do so much. You can't do that. You know, you don't want to. You've been hearing it. Yeah, throughout the media, advertisements, and through the Olympics. You can't do that. Well, in a manner of speaking, there's no sense of truth within that, because it's all dependent upon you. The E4 is effectively environmental effects. Right? It's what you choose to believe and the people who you surround yourself with, who will encourage you. Everybody has the potential. Everybody has, first and foremost, a baseline. And then based on the current setting or trend or usual mode of practice, yeah, they do have an upper range. But potential itself is dependent upon your drive. You can push the boundaries out just a little bit further, yeah, to achieve much more. But again, that's dependent upon yourself. Yeah. So NLP, in the terms of the linguistic processes. So it's the way the brain processes the information. Yeah? There you go. Fundamentally, how the brain works. Receives and decodes data input, that is, suggestions, instructions, and or actions, responses to the external environment. Yeah? As we were saying before, about learning, about participation. And never be frightened of getting involved. Some people are frightened of getting involved for making mistakes, and don't. How else are you going to learn? You make a mistake, acknowledge it, respect the fact that you've done it, and other people point out, learn by it, and keep moving. Yeah? So forms as a linking or connecting element to the external environment. Also, because effectively, as a fixed variable, as an entity who is learning yourself, and the way you're processing data, effectively what you put out will affect other people. Hence the reason why we use 80-20, for instance. As I said before, 80% of your future is unwritten, but 20% of it isn't, because of the external environment. Yeah, and likewise for the person. Yeah, like I say with my academics or my learning, my experiences, I probably know about 80% of the entire global economy, but I deliberately leave, in my own mind, a part of my processing, I leave 20% as a margin of error for learning. Yeah, which is also the part of the flexibility part within the brain, the gaps, that allows me to adjust what it is I know according to the shift and the change in the environment, or my external environment. Again, as we pointed out in part 2, is the processing of internal data. Now, a lot of this you won't ever actually see. Again, especially when it comes down to biological stuff, your brain does that automatically. And if you haven't got a clue, which most of us don't, know how that actually works, then the chances are you could be just a puddle of mud by the time you finish playing with it. No, seriously, internally, the internal data in the terms of information that's been sent around your body, whether it's right from biological chemistry and the rest that goes with it, through to the information that you're processing in your brain in terms of feelings, in terms of emotions. You'll see them through like dreams, or sat there and you might be meditating for a moment and you get flashes of thoughts, whether that be, shall we say, telepathic, as some people would say they are, mediums and whatnot, or it could just be echoes of memories and that you're still sorting out and processing. Yeah, so you are quite literally a walking computer, the most complex thing on the face of the planet. Complex, some would say, well, computer's complex, it can do it, of course it can. But complexity by design, to be able to develop itself in the terms of its organic infrastructure, it can't do. Not only can you self-think, you can self-create. You have the ability to renew, yeah, break connections and create new ones and so on. So that's why you're the most complex, the most unique on the face of the earth. That doesn't give any less value to all the other biological creatures, i.e. birds, cats, dogs, horses, elephants, and so on. So it doesn't give them any less value, but you are unique. Okay? And this is how you work things out. This is why we brought part 2 in first, to now see part 3. Yeah. The next one is the second part. While some learning methods equate to 100%, as some will notice, the others don't. This is due to the individual themselves and can only be determined by keen observation. So once again, this is a little different to the last one. Okay. It's a little different to the last one. So not all of them add up to 100%. Like in the last one, it didn't all add up to 100%. Although by the time you've finished, if you fall within one category, then you need to start considering that, okay, maybe I need to extend or expand my learning parameters, or the way that I learn, the methods of learning, to be able to capture more information. Yeah. And this one, it shows you, as we've put here, spoken, which is communication now. So you've got all your other senses in here: speak, touch, smell, yeah, see and hear, sight, which is you see again. Yeah. Learning and retention. Now this is an old model. Some of the information is not exacting, and it will be updated as and when other information comes through. The framework itself is right, but the content, again, is basically developing. So 2, it's the programming. So you've got the process, which is the brain, yeah, and the programming, which is the mind. So it's the result of these here. Yeah? It's how we program the mind, what we put in. It's response mechanism to the NLP1, or the first part. Ways and means of communication. The tuning to the environment, So you're tuning yourself in to the environment. Next, as some of us, and there's probably many more out there, some of us, much like myself, we are tuned in to a much broader environment. We're listening to many different things going on around us, and we piece that information together to create something else. Like, this is all fragments of information right across my years of learning, right across the academic and economic and political and scientific industries, all coming together in one understanding. So it's tuning itself to the environment, and then eventually it will adapt. And it will. It's a form of programming. Part of communication through methods such as symbols and or evolution, or as evolution has determined. As you've seen, we use a lot of symbols throughout, much the same as we use a lot of acronyms. Yeah, acronyms and symbols are much the same thing, just one's written and one's drawn. Yeah. One, as I say, there's a picture holds 1,000 words, as we were saying before. Yeah. One holds more information, that's images, and the acronyms hold a specific set of information. Like we were saying with the head, the local, pick poetry, that type of thing. It holds specific bits of information. Symbols much as seals or shields, or company logos. The shadow crowns, it's the infinity with a few other interrelated loops that come off of that. It's nature and industry coming together. Yeah. Other companies have their logos, and the more you come to understand them logos, and you're able to break them down into their component parts, the more you come to understand the ideals or what that symbol represents. Yeah. Again, evolution, evolving, be it written or spoken languages, as we saw also in part 2. Okay, moving on. Right, and this one is pretty straightforward. It is. There isn't a great deal of written amount of information to it, purely and simply because this one is self-explanatory. What it does is it takes everything that we've seen and heard so far about learning styles and places it into a disc. But a bit like that musical thing that you had to copy the lights when it got flashed up on a flash, yeah, things like that. Dr. Howard Gardner produced this one, so the credit goes to him for this. Remember, I choose these not necessarily to actually push a particular model forward. It's just that I feel that it's the best one to represent what we're talking about at the time. You can create your own. There's loads of different models. It's whichever suits. So again, this one may be missing one. See what we got here. There's 7 in here. We might even be missing one in accordance to smell. For instance, as we were saying about the food industry, you learn stuff through smell. But this one, it's addressing all the key elements. Again, key being the word. Musical. So for the love of singing, whistling, humming, tapping feet and hands. Also listening. And singing in song time, trips to concerts and so on and so forth. Right through to bodily kinesthetics. Needs to role play, drama, movement, things to build. So it covers a lot of stuff. And you find that 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, that you will fit into one of those, but don't be too concerned. A bit like the film Divergence, okay? You're not going to fit just solely and exclusively into one. You'll find that perhaps you fit into the interpersonal side of things. Okay? You love to read, organise stuff, relating, manipulating data. Alright, we have the negative side to that. But by understanding the positive and the negative, you'll be able to identify the negative and overcome them, as we were saying in part 2 and in part 1. Mediating being another one. Yeah, interpersonal skills, need for friends, groups, games, social gatherings, community events. So again, you may fit in to not just simply one, but both. And you'll find that as you're going through the industry sets, that each industry will relate to not only just one of these, but will relate to maybe 2 or 3 of them. So you're able to structure your own understanding and acceptance of, oh, I need to move into industry, what am I going to do? I can do this, that, and the other. Well, that industry does that. As a matter of fact, I enjoy doing that. Yeah. As an example, remove 2 of the parts. Yeah. This one I've styled it around driving, around drivers, whether it be public service or whether it be truck drivers, and so on and so forth. Effectively, logical and mathematical. In the case of public services, fare handling, traffic negotiation and problem solving. Yeah? Bodily kinesthetic, driving, customer assistance. Driving in itself is a physically active requirement or a physical requirement. Customer assistance, which is where your manual handling comes in. Somebody takes a fall, are you able to assist? If so, how do you assist? Spatial, driving as a skill, again, is basically manoeuvring, observation, etc. So it's your awareness of your environment. You're capable of actually manoeuvring that vehicle within that environment. Interpersonal, the ability to act, react, interact, and build relationships. Yeah. Linguistics, effectively, is communication. And as we've been saying, as we've been moving through this, yeah, internally and externally. Internally, along with your peers, your workmates and everything. Externally, and we're talking about being interpersonal, building relationships. Yeah. So by the time we're finished, it requires 72% of your brain, yeah, of your brains or your capabilities just to do a driving job. As simple as it may seem, it uses a fair old amount. And it requires a lot from you. There you go. So from that, moving on. Next one, we brought in a secondary one, second example. Okay, a bit more complex this time. Yeah. Active experimentation, and pragmatist. Concrete experience, the activist. Reflective observation, reflectors. And abstract conceptualization, the theorists. Yeah. So Kolb and Honey and Mumford, all from 1982 to 84, have looked at this from a more of a quasi kind of approach. So they've taken the 7, or possibly 8, and compacted it and combined it into only, so we say 4. Yeah. Alright. Again, you have the option to download this and work with it, and you can see that in full and read through some of the details. But as it says there, Kolb identified 2 separate learning activities that occur in the learning cycle. Perception, the way we take in information, and processing, how we deal with the information. Yeah, so it ties into NLP 1 and 2. This is represented on the design as 2 axes dividing the cycle into 4 quadrants. Yeah. 2 axes, 4 quadrants. Each quadrant represents different learning processes as follows. So converging, processes relating to bringing a number of perspectives to find a single answer, which is what I've been doing to produce these 3. Is looking at it from multiple perspectives. Everybody, in other words, this is where other people have come into it. They've put their effort in. I've gathered that information. I've broken it all apart, done the comparisons and everything, and then you've got this. Yeah. Find a single answer, usually right or wrong. Yeah? You may use this way of thinking in a scientific context. Yeah? Diverging processes are about generating a number of accounts of different experiences. Typically, those are more creative processes. Assimilating and accommodating. Yeah? So explanations are there. So, like I said, this is self-explanatory, so you can even walk itself through. Learning is learning. It's just that the activities you engage in with your online class may be just slightly different. So say for instance you're talking about actual establishments. You don't want to actually go into a university or a college to learn something because you're committed to your job. So you do it online. Learning is learning. No matter how it's presented, as long as the information, as we've put here, yeah, are converging and assimilating, yeah. As long as how that information, as long as the outcome is the same, doesn't matter what environment you're in. Yeah? Some prefer it more than others. Some people can take on more workload than others. Some people can work and learn. Yeah. So there you go. So you've got activists, reflectors, theorists, and pragmatists. Alright. Right, remember this? We're back at this model now. What I'm going to do is strip away that lot. Strip away a bit more and merge it into the marketplace as we did before. Merge it into the marketplace as it is. Let's bring our politicians over and our lawmakers and that. Okay, and there we go. Bring it all together. What we've now got is our entire model. Remember, these can be slightly different. This is only an example only. This is an example only. It is for presentation purposes, for the basics. Yeah. Bringing it all together in one national arena, and then link it there. Yep. Here, looking at consumer demand when it comes down to the marketplace. Looking at market development and return customs. Now that we've brought everything together to better answer a question of market functions, we are briefly going to explore some elements. All right then, moving on. So we can juggle things around a little bit. So let's do that. Alright, a recipe for change, marketplace creation, the start. So we've got our previous model, but this time what we've done, we've changed it to supplier. There you go. And what we've done is we've reduced some of the other components. Yeah. Let's start integrating them. Marketplace takes the center, consumer being top, supplier being the bottom. Yep. Consumer, supplier. By the time we're finished, it's growth and development. All of that is our target. The more we consume, the more we need. The more you need, the more we need to supply. Yep. All of this can be tied into a lot of, shall we say, stuff surrounding health. Yeah. Overconsumption of stuff, therefore the overproduction of stuff, or the requirement to produce more produce. Yeah. But then again, within market cycles, again we've got products as well. The leading one is mobile phones or mobile technology, computers, electronics, things like that. Yeah. Now these are very simple, very straightforward. Yeah. Pretty much explain themselves. So let's draw up the consumer and the supplier, and the all familiar triangle. Alright. Consumer need, and products and services. One part. Second part, increased consumption, supply increased. The variation, new stock, and good value and competitive edge. So each one are opposing components but work with each other to create one, shall we say, supply and demand model. From that, what we can do is look at it from the supplier's point of view. In this case, what we're doing, you can see here, look, yeah, first quarter through to fourth quarter, so entire year. We've broken that down into north, east, south, and west. Yeah. And this can be, let's just say, the rate of consumption. Yeah. Let's say, even on the flip side, as it says there, look, location or population, we can also look at it from another point of view, saying, for instance, let's say, based on the location in the north, yeah, this is the population, and it's growing. Let's say at the beginning of the first quarter of the year, the target, or the ability to supply, was set at, let's say, 30. Yeah? Let's say the demand is set at 30. And as we've moved through the quarters, demand has increased. Yeah? Or population's increased, therefore, in turn, demand has increased. Yeah? So which basically means if the marker is set at 30, the new marker now is at 50. Albeit the fact that in the final quarter in the east, that exceeded 50. Yeah. Whereas in the west, for again, all example, that the demand or population, therefore demand, was low. But then there was a sudden boom in the final quarter. For whatever the reason may be, it's applicable to all industries, whatever it is they're doing, would be a service or a product. Yeah. And this is from the internal view. Yeah. Statistics such as these, on a global scale or a national scale, you can see it as the gross domestic product or production. For example, you can find this information. If it's a PLC, they're public records for share and stakeholders. Yeah. Local councils, libraries for commerce, chambers of commerce, Office for National Statistics, again depending on what you're actually looking for. Yeah. International Monetary Fund and the World Economic Forum as other international examples. So it depends on what you're looking for. But generally as a whole, and its basics, this is all it is in terms of economics. From a business perspective and from an economic perspective, what's happening externally and what's happening internally, to be able to gauge what's going on. Yeah. So again, consumer supply. Let's push ourselves forward. Right, satisfaction and quality commitment. We can use the same thing again about a quality review, done through surveys, for instance. Yeah. Supply and demand, customer satisfaction in this case is for water, electricity, and perhaps gas across the 4 annual quarters. Yeah. This could be customer satisfaction. Yeah. And let's say the general satisfaction would be at 60, or 50 being the fact that it's 100, so it's a 50. So water has just fallen short in the first quarter, but is increasing its rate of satisfaction quarter on quarter. Yeah. And other supply, we've said let's say 90 because it's a complete. It could be anything. It could be. It's applicable to all other parts. Yes. But this shows the response of the organisation to consumer satisfaction and quality commitment. Okay. To the point where we can look at supply and demand, and supply met. Again, if we set the halfway mark at 30, that being the actual supply itself, or the demand for the supply. In the first quarter it was down, water was down, but as it's progressed and it's responding to the quality review and the demand requirements, or the supply requirements, it is catching up. Simple analysis, just straightforward analysis like that. It is. And we can move on to the next part, so we're keeping them two in mind. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail. Cost and retail price itself. Now this is where we start venturing a little into the skill-based side of it all. It is. So we're going to touch on it. Like I said before, the whole idea of this is to show you business, its divisions, how it operates within the actual marketplace, how businesses grow, and then international relationships. Yeah. And we're not going to touch on the skill base itself, but this is where we do kind of touch on the skill base to create a sense of relevance when we start looking at the cost and the retail price, or the final price. So in this case, cost analysis. The processing is manufacture, overheads, recruitment, in this case marketing. So already we've got 4 with possible 6, yeah, to make up our 6-point plan. From this, some of you will have seen this, the Venn design, or the Venn circles, or however people are expressing it, of the developing. Now, usually you would see it coming in 3s, right? It's not always the case. Yeah? Sometimes it requires more. So don't be shy of experimenting, playing around if needs be. In this case, we've chosen 4 because what we're looking at is packaging when it comes down to marketing. So the type of packaging. Again, when we look back to the basics of the business model again, and we see the law, yeah, we could be looking at environmental impacts. The type of packaging, will it have an impact on the environment? Branding, depending on the business really. That is. With Shadow Crown and any of its related divisions, it could be black and gold with its seal on it. Yeah. Context. Context in the manner of how you present that. Yeah. Some would say it's packaging, some would say it's branding, but when you break it down, it's how it's presented. Yeah. And then you've got your target. Yeah. Your target audience itself. Now, we've placed the target in because this is the part where the skill base comes in. Yeah. In each one of these, right, or rather, each one of these can be broken down like this again. So there might be somebody who deals with the branding for all the different types of products. Say, for instance, a retailer, or the producer, let's say Nisa, producer of different products. It may have one particular brand, and it deals with that to make sure that it's presenting itself properly. But then there might be somebody who deals with packaging. Somebody deals with the target, or targeting the right type of audience. So within marketing, it could be search engine optimization. It could be the website development. Yeah? It could be statistical analysis. Yeah? The rate of consumption, who's consuming what and how much of it. Yeah? And then based on what we've seen before in the NLPs and the learning, how these other 3 parts go across. Yeah? All to create our final product. That product then, you've got to take into consideration shipping, and also VAT and tax and cost. So each one of these is going to have its own breakdown. Like for instance, I've placed in here in the document for you, for example, overheads. We could break that down into wages and warehousing costs, stationery and various other bits and bobs. Yeah. Recruitment, it could be outsourced recruiting, such as an agency, yeah, or it could be the training department along with the HR parts of the division. So again, it's wages again, but more about the training side of things. About advertising was another part. Then we have our marketing, then we have our shipping. Shipping is if it has been brought in from overseas, or uses a particular inland freight service, or even maintains its own vehicles. Yeah, so fueling, transport costs, and so on and so forth. Right through to the VAT and tax. Well, these are what they are. Organisations are able to claim some of this back. Yeah. But again, the initial outlay, yeah, profit and loss, the taxes that are attached to that, corporation taxes, what it costs within national insurances and various other, and also pensions in there. So it's all part of it. Right through to the manufacturing again, which is where it could be leased or rented. They could even build their own, or they're bought in or maintained. So it's all the costs that surround building up the manufacturing part, whether it's components, if they're shaping sheet metal or plastics or anything like that, it's the actual molds that they need to actually create them plastic molds, like in mobile phone casing, yeah, or computer keyboard and things like that. Yeah. So all of this lot is taken into consideration, and these are all the jobs that are needed, the people that need to fill these gaps, right down to the retail outlet themselves. All of this combined creates retail price. So this is why you see a lot of it about people cutting back on costs and so on and so forth to bring down the actual cost of producing that final product. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Development life cycles, market shift. Something again. This time it's the marketplace and the supplier's position. In this case, we bring them into the middle. So we've got the consumer and the supplier, we've got the market with all its goings, an international market which will be reflective of this, but it's another part. In this case, we're looking at newcomers, transfers, people who are coming into the country and working within the economy or within the marketplace. Yeah. From one side to another. And we're looking at recruitment and administration in terms of the newcomers and transfers, so the HR and the training department. Community expansion, so if we're naturally, as a consequence of newcomers or transfers, we're going to see some form of community expansion. So we're going to be needing marketing and analysis. Predominantly the analysis to identify this, and then marketing to target these newcomers, depending on how they perceive the product. Yeah, so location and positioning. So by the time you've finished, for example, as we were saying before, in Cornwall, TK Maxx has moved in. So based on their marketing and their analysis of the community or the local area, the marketplace itself, they've realised that perhaps moving into this area might be a good thing. And in the first day, it proved to be not bad. Increased diversity, stock evaluation, so cultural needs and capabilities. So part of the analysis, the recruitment or the HR department, yeah, they may have discovered increased diversity, so they'll need to reevaluate the stock. Yeah. Are they capable of supplying multiculturalism? Yeah. Timings of demand, research and development. It could be tech, for example. What we're looking at is lifestyles and improvements. Can improvements be brought to the communities to improve lifestyles? Yeah. Like, for instance, the difference between the boomers and the millennials. Yeah. There's a shift in the social trends, shift in the understanding or diversity of understanding within societies, and so on and so forth. However you wish to look at it. I'll be classified as a boomer, or I came around in the period of the boomers. Yeah. So I'm not a millennial, I'm a boomer. Difference being for myself, based on all of my learning, is I understand equally, if not more, of what's going on around me, because it's been part of what I do. Yeah? Which is the same as yourselves. You learn to be able to progress and to come to understand whatever it is you feel is you need to understand to participate. And that in itself creates a cycle. So yeah, self-explanatory. Okay, moving on. As we said before, communication is paramount. Right? In this case, we've got the communication loop. So we've got a supplier as our product. We've got the consumer. We take out all the gummins to just reveal our actual product. In this case, what and how much of it. And the consumer in relation to lifestyle and financial management. So the supply has provisions. The supplier has provisions. So according to these two elements, we'll determine what and how much. Yeah. Outlet and location, as we were saying before, about another organisation moving into the area. Where on location, notice of where and accessibility. Yeah. Communication, the user utilising, say for instance, the media network. Examples are such as that you can hear businesses through the media, such as radio ads. A new star perhaps has opened, or there has been a breakthrough of some description. So you're getting it through the news. Advertisers, or they're advertising it themselves on popular social networks. All in turn creating, from the sales orders or purchase and orders, consumer awareness. So word of mouth. And supply has provisions, so availability and volume of demand. So whilst seemingly very opposite, they are relevant to each other. And all in itself creating a communication loop, a communication cycle to be able to move a product on or allow you to know that there's a product available. Moving on. And for business, we just have one last slide for business, or two slides, but they kind of like merge as one. So we're going back to globalization, replicating the model. Right? And some of these, as I was roll throughs, so we can bring them in and just let it run. You see that? All coming together, make the marketplace, operates for a short while, and then as we move throughout the times, as we have done through the eras, products are merging and whatnot, new markets are being created, in turn creating an international market of varying different products. So each of them discs could quite well be different products, all emerging from one or another marketplace. By creating that connection in the middle is what brings you the diversity. Yeah. Also brings you an opportunity to venture off abroad. Notice? Okay, so back to the basics. The basics of them. Let's get rid of that. Put you up there. Bring our infamous cycle again. So by the time we've finished, it all boils down to communication for like branch openings. As branches open, what can be supplied? Whether it be local and through local and national mediums. Yeah. It could even be through the internet. So our internet-based businesses that are emerging more and more. Even part of the sharing economy. Members in academic institutes, they're also international now. So effectively, all of these are happening all over the world. Yeah? Shadow Crown could be seen as one. regulatory bodies, a financial say, for instance, it could be, or court systems. It's a service still, it is. And political dealership, i.e. different political parties or governments coming together, working with each other and trying to create a marketplace. It doesn't necessarily have to be a single marketplace. As long as trade is done fairly, currency is working properly, the black market is reduced, minimized, there's certain elements of free movement, or it's regulated free movement. Yeah, so we know that the movement of goods is done appropriately, there are counterfeits and so on and so on and so forth. Yeah, then you get your international marketplace. So it's not about entirely a single market. It may become that in time, but that can only happen based on a majority agreement. But having many different countries and many different marketplaces is what creates our diversity. As I mentioned in one of the videos in the past, what effectively happens is by having separate marketplaces, but separate marketplaces connecting together, it allows us to have that diversity. Say, for instance, having a meal. One country could produce sausages. I'm not saying this is what happens, just as an example, a bit of a basic example. One made sausages, or fish, or ham, as in a joint, or turkey, and things like that. And somebody could produce a salad, some rice, and so on and so forth. By the time we finish, all of these markets coming together are creating one plate for food, a meal. Yeah, that is where it's heading. So it's nothing to be fearful of. It is just more a matter of fact than anything else. It's going to happen because it does indeed help other organisations, societies as such, to actually help grow, as I've put here. Further to the last slide, and what this means to you is, whilst ensuring they, or a country, does have a basic market platform of their own to enable themselves to be self-sustaining, this is where, basically speaking, each country is able to enhance their current position by trading with others, which in turn will enhance further the marketplace and household capabilities and levels of prosperity. Yeah. So again, there are cycles present. Their frequency and level of impact will be determined by the level of product authority, or otherwise its name, its history, its credibility, or how well it is marketed, and or if it is needed or not. And that happens all over the place. So globalization is just effectively a way of saying, right, it happens here in the UK, happens in America, happens in Canada, happens in Mexico, Africa, Europe, China, Australia. So why not just bring it all together? Yeah? And just allow people to trade with each other. Yeah? So it's a very complex task to get all of that going. And it is regulating it properly, and so on and so on and so forth. This is just the basics for it. Okay. That being that, yeah, you'll find national and globalization are much the same thing. However, more effort will be required. And that's it, folks. The basics of business and economics. So what we're going to do now, we're going to move on to politics. But before we do, we're going to have a moment or two, let you process that and work through it, and then we'll come back. Okay, we've had our 5 minutes. Part 2 of Part 3. Sorry, 3B. Politics. It's the strength of some, weakness of other, the bane of other people's lives, generally a bone of contention. It could be the demise of a country. It could be the creation of a country. or futures. But then both our present and our future have to have emerged from somewhere. In this particular one, again, we're not going to go into it in depth, purely and simple, because by the time we finish with the framework, what we're looking at is idealism or ideals, ideology, ultimately in modern day philosophies, ranging right from conservatism right through to liberalism. That's not to say that you should support one or the other, it's just a range. Okay? So what we're going to do in this one is we're going to avoid all of that. Yeah? This is not about preaching one party or another, or pitching one party against the other. This is about the framework, the structure. As we pointed out within the business side of things, yeah, is its influence over economics, over societies. In general terms of speaking, we're just simply going to look at how politics has come about, how it influences, how it works, and then create you an ideal platform in which to build on and from, and lead you in the direction that you want to go in. Otherwise, it's just a case of just informing you of what's going on around you. You're becoming a better and more understanding participant in terms of development. So, by the time we're finished, you might not be part of the faith realms, or researchers or academic realms. You might not be part of the business and the economic realms. You might be part of the political realm. You may want to venture down that path for your job. Yeah. Knowing something about where it's all come from will help you ultimately to understand where it's going. Where it is now to then where it's going, or where it needs to go. In this case, because we're actually looking at this from an international point of view, we look at it from a localized view to then show you how it works on an international basis, much like we did with 3A, yeah, in the business. So effectively, we've cascaded through a time of Ronin's thinker, Da Vinci, Confucius, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. We even venture into Darwinism, Sigmund Freud, and so on and so forth. We've come right through the whole avenues. And now we're going to settle on some of our philosophers who have had their fingers in many pies. Okay? Let's have a look then. Okay. We're going to have a look at politics and its history. Yeah? Building your colony, so theory, your government, and political science in action. So the ultimate aim of this is quite literally to build everything up from its history, through building up a country, how the government then comes into being, and then how we apply the science of politics on that. By the time you're finished, what you'll actually see is a nice, clear perspective as to what things are, yeah? How things are working. The documentation for this is much larger. It's much more detailing. More so to actually get it right. Okay, so let's have a bunch for this one here. So moving on. Okay, the term political science is the systematic study of the state and the government. It further extends itself into the realms of social science regarding the practice and theory of politics, the analysis of political systems, and the study of political behaviour and its impact on society. Yeah. So they work hand in hand with each other in impacting where attitudes, behaviours, so on and so forth. When talking about perspective, otherwise having a political perspective, it is referring to the core of science as the theory behind politics, and its taught practices are not the party element itself, as we said a moment ago, as this is the personal choice, much the same as what is a shoe, yeah, and what type will you wear. Okay, so effectively it is noted to have started or recorded as far back as 1200 BC. 3,200 years old, politics. Whilst this is the case, it can very easily be speculated that politics in one form or another will have been around within the records prior to 2000 BC. So, as we mentioned before about prehistory being more than 4,000 years. Furthermore, from this understanding, as you will discover further in, the practice will have represented itself as either a form of monarch or otherwise a chieftain system. Yeah? Even shamans, depending on which culture you come from. Okay, politics, as a word, is a derivative of ancient Greek, cities or states, or polis. Yeah? There's a Greek variation to it. Yeah, city or city-states within itself has created an air of confusion representative of such models as Athens, Sparta and Corinth, which still and again confuse itself even today. So, meaning when we're talking about confusion is about how cities are cities, or why are towns towns, the city and the state, the difference between the two, and states and nations. We'll cover them throughout. So, politics as a further word evolved, as an further evolved word is politicus or politica. Yeah? As an adjective is used to describe anything of the state. Yeah? Alternatively and additionally, it is also versed as politikos, meaning of, for, or relating to citizens. Yeah? Now, there are other buzzwords around the network, as I've placed in the document, about the art and science of politics. However, as in Part 1, education, the science is the application of theory, so the applying to science. Therefore, the art is the art or research behind political practices. Yeah? The research encompasses the development of form, behaviour and purposes to formulate an applied function of science. And if it's back on again. Okay. Moving on. Science, as a word, is an evolved or derivative of the Latin word scientia, or scientia, yeah? Meaning knowledge. Additionally, has also been referred to as a derivative of scia, meaning to know, or being told in principle is the application of knowledge, which is practice or praxis, from the theory. As we were saying within the notes, theoria, meaning looking at or viewing or beholding. Or being told, again, since 12 BC, political science is the knowledge of state and its citizens, or citizenship. Mankind will never see an end to trouble until lovers of wisdom come to hold political power, or holders of power become lovers of wisdom. Plato's Republic. Okay. Moving on. So when exploring the science of politics, it can be very confusing and weighted, if not for the most, to some based on the negative threads that have been woven throughout both history and its impacting areas. Therefore, from the above and what's to come, we have attempted to not only find this thread for you, but unravel it from its already confused state and re-establish what is meant by and for politics from the beginning. So 3,000 years condensed into such a thereabouts hour-long document is going to, if not be heavy, be hard at best. So we have attempted to consider carefully what to condense down, and in turn to only include the finest points for your benefit and participants and citizens of your state and nation. Yeah? It may be a bit longer than an hour. I'm hoping degree an hour, but we could be pushing towards 2. Alright. Yeah, let's cover a little more history before looking at the segments that make up our political infrastructures, and in turn iron out any misconceptions, in turn lay an eventual path to the future. That's a bit of a scroll through for you. Some of them are ruins and things like that, but interpretations of the past, buildings, yeah, and government buildings, and all those who have been involved in it throughout the eras, as you can see rolling in around the top. Some of the statements that have been made by some of these political participants. Yeah. Yeah. The state shall never be too small. Yeah. Man is by nature a political animal. Right. With a final one saying, if I seem to take part in politics, it's only because politics encircles us today like the coil of a snake from which one cannot get out, no matter how much one tries. I wish therefore to wrestle with this snake. Oh. So effectively, even some of our philosophers have realised that at the end of the day, it's an inescapable practice. It is the way states, countries are run. Yeah. However, the biggest question is how they're run. Yeah. In retrospect, and when looking at the weave of politics throughout history, we can find 3 stages. Furthermore, and to see these origins, we have also unearthed 3 theories that have built them up. It's been building them up over the years. Remember, we are still evolving, so it doesn't mean that these are still in play across the world. Effectively, I've brought them forward because they've been the main actors within all of this. So you're looking at things like the divine theory, which in turn has created a religious stage. A religious stage is still present in some of the countries. Social contract theory, a metaphysical stage. Metaphysical stage is also it's kind of relative to the actual religious stage, so 2 of the same but opposites. Then you've got the force theory in the modern stage. Force theory still exists even in small parts. Yeah. A lot of the time it's due to attitude. So while certainly not being perfect matches with each other, and certainly perceiving to be of a Western nature, they are thereabouts and do show a historical ladder. Yeah, so it's the mindset behind politics over the last couple of thousand years, last 3,000 years. Yeah. It shows the evolution of attitudes and behaviours towards people's own countries, how other nations have come around. Yeah. Okay, with social contract and modern stage now being more the driving understanding by the most. However, to pick up on the Western thread when exploring history, you'll also find that these theories and stages were present right across the Eurasian, Islamic and Eastern provinces and territories. As time has passed, we can see other ideals emerge that have shaped the world of politics. For example, the philosophies emanating from the realms of India. The Indian Chronicle of Politics encompassed the views of freedom and was inspired by their views on transcendence, or the desire to merge oneself with the higher self. So already we're arcing back into part 2. Yeah, isn't it? The higher self. Man, or rather humanity, is attracted to something greater than he or she is. Okay. Moving on. When it comes down to the history of it all, I could go through it all, but I'm not going to, because there's a lot of information already. Yeah? You can see there in the actual documentation, looking at this from the mentioned metaphysical stage, we can also see the basic frameworks of expectations emerge. Yeah. Also, 2 key and otherwise distinct elements become prominent as the world over starts to wake up to itself, such as going from the gathering of power to the wide dispersal of power, the struggle to accumulate wealth and resources, through to the struggle over scarcity of resources. So it's a distribution of them and being able to provide to people what it is they need. So there's that economic cycle there. Yeah? Just moving on a bit, eh? So, should be permanent or large enough to be self-sufficing or self-sufficient, self-sustaining. When you actually look at the inescapable presence of diversity and scarcity, it shows that politics is an inevitable feature of the human condition. Yeah? And a condition that needs to be sustaining, self-sustaining. Yeah? So, a whole lot more. Let's move it on. We've got a whole host of stuff. We can build our country up in the view of Confucius, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Mahatma Gandhi. We can even pay attention or homage or write down and note some of the principal understandings of our other guys, ladies and gents, that have played within the arena of politics too. Already. So we can go far back as 1200 BC to finding stone carvings that lay out a set of cardinal yet ethically based commandments to the development of societies, politics and economics, with new stone structures suggesting an extension of new moralities for sustainability within the country. George Guy stones. Yep. Within these advancements, we have even seen more complexities emerge where politics and economics have fractured again into geopolitics and geoeconomics. I say fracturing. What they've done is basically fractured all of the political sciences and reconverged them again to actually create something that works on either a macro or a micro scale, or small or large scales. So it's encompassing a lot more. It's the diversity within politics and economics. This all may not seem too relevant yet, but does when we start to explore the differences across social blocks, societal blocks, or cities, or land mass size and leadership rationales, capabilities, characteristics, perspectives, and directions and intentions. Right. First off, it's worth noting that people can become confused when it comes to classifying landmass against quantifying populations. So either ask questions or slowly reading down and backtrack if you need to. So as we're moving through this, if you find yourself becoming a bit lost, then either refer to somebody and ask the questions, or just backtrack through the document and you'll be able to pick up on the threads again. Furthermore, what I've also done is I've placed in a reasonable list of sciences and theories that you can study and look up. I'll give you more information, and also references to where some of this information has come from and where you can go for more information. Yeah. So, there we go. We found our land. We believe it needs to be self-sustaining, self-sufficient. It pretty much seems to be a barren or otherwise indigenous or other barren of indigenous folk and identifiable landmarks. It is quite sizable by horsepower. It takes the data across one way and 3 days the other. Whilst the sky is clear above and water clear around, there are intermittent signs of traffic in the neighbouring skies, more than 20 miles out. No other territories or anything like that. The rainfall seems not to be too heavy and is still relatively seasonal. The land does not seem to be saturated and disperses most of its excess via several rivers flowing outward bound. With a couple of landlocked pools, rivers, centred to the landmass, there seems to be some indigenous wildlife, vegetation and bears some fruits. Woodlands are not sparse, yet what there is of it is very dense and old. So what we're actually doing now, as you've picked up through both the document and what we've done is by moving on, is we're actually going to build our own colony to show you how it all works. So you've seen the beginning, the perspective of it all. We've come through the history of all things, understanding of people and all that, and economics, to now come to piecing it all together. Right, so it's an ideal scenario. We have land, so terrestrial, fluvial, interior waters, aerial domains, so the aerospace, marine, and external waters, both surface and subaquatic. Oops. A people bound together by common attraction and repulsions into a living organism presented of a common pulse, a common intelligence and inspiration, and destined apparently to have a common history and common fate. Spotted that, I've not been able to find out who that is, but in general terms of speaking, as a quote, as I found within the researching of putting this all together, I thought it was an ideal little statement, because at the end of the day, when you start looking at other people's colonies, or other nations, or other colonies, you'll find that they are groups of people with a common purpose, a common fate, common history. Yeah. So, from that, let's call this land Nova Mundi. Novi Mundi. As in, our new world. And no, not the New World Order, or it could be. It's not. It's just our new world. Alrighty. From that, we'll have a look at the demographics of Nova Mundi. Citizenship. Legal or jurisdict. Can be changed or taken back. So what we're doing now we've found our land, now we've identified all of its resourcing capabilities, yeah, what we're actually beginning to do now is sort out, basically, who's with us and how it works. Yeah? So like for instance here, citizenship. Inhabitants will then become native, because there was nobody else there prior to it. Citizens is constitutional and collective declaration of ownership. So now the citizens who are inhabiting legally Nova Mundi. Electors, participants of development. So effectively, if you want to see a land build, you need to participate in it. Yeah? And in turn, you become an elector. Yeah. Therefore, in the political context as you know it now, make decisions, or assist with making decisions. The faith, is the biggest question of all, one of the biggest arguments. But in our case, the belief system is mixed, explorative, planet and universe, as we saw in the last one. Union through commitment, contribution, and communication. Yeah. Have a look at our nationality. So what we're going to call ourselves is ethnic or racial. In this case, again, we use some of the actual Latin terms. We're going to call it migma, or mixture, or migma, or a mixture of nationalities. But absolute or innate, we're going to play with a worldly approach because of our mixed and explorative nature, and planet and universe, and our mixed culture and that. We just call ourselves, as in Orbis. As you'll have seen and learned in parts 1 and 2 and the latter sections covering business, from its content we see the introduction and development of a marketplace for the trade of goods and services and community hubs for social and entertainment activities. So effectively what we're doing is basically time jumping. Yeah, we're jumping through time so as not to drag this out too much for you. Yeah. So already we've got a head full of ideas, we've found a plot of land, we've now structured of citizenship, how that's going to work, how people are going to be represented, and how people are going to appear to others, the faith, the general or generalized faith of the land, it's mixed, explorative, and then nationality. Yeah. So Normandy. As the world in us change, so does the world around us. As we were saying before, about our perspective, about our participation, about what it is we say and what we do, yeah? What we learn, it changes. Eventually, it changes not only our perspective, but it will change other people's perspective. In this, like I say, we're doing a time jump, and it also assists with ironing out any misconceptions or misunderstandings around formations of societal blocks. In this case, a hamlet, dispersed or small yet limited occupancy with gathering points of interest, without gathering points of interest or trade. The village is a closely knit occupancy with gathering points of interest and trade this time. Can also be identified by landmarks such as chapel, marketplace, or schools. A town, increased commerce and populace and greater connectivity. So each time we move on, we still maintain the prior, yeah, but we build on top of that. And this time we've still perhaps got our chapels in smaller villages, but we've now got more villages coming together. And this time what we've done is we've got a church now. We've got a slightly bigger marketplace and other trade points, other methods of trade. And this time, instead of just having schools in them little villages, we now have a college. We move on to a city. So again, taking the previous two into account, and increased commerce and populace, diverse connection points, so we've got more of them. But this time, because we've increased in size and we can afford it based on space and increased contribution, we now have cathedrals. So it's multiple trade points, and this time we have universities as well. So the city itself is now a diverse environment offering schools, colleges, and universities. There are little chapels in places, perhaps churches, and a big cathedral. So, on scale. So the best way to remember these, if you cut it right back, a village has a chapel, a town has a church, and a city has a cathedral. Or if you're on the other side of things, a village is a school, a town is a college, and a city is a university. Then you have your metropolitan side of things where you'll start looking at rail networks and trains all converged into one. So you've got these very large hubs, yeah, all these cinemas and like multi-complexes. Yeah. Then we have the state. Has, or otherwise is, constructed of more than 2 to 3 of the pride. So basically, the state has multiple cities. So it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have any defining factors such as these. It is these. It's multiples. Then the nation is either by virtuous agreement of citizens, electorates, or is a composition of more than 2 states. Yeah? So if you just simply are a state, so like you call this one block of a state because we've got multiple cities in it, yeah, then some will classify you as a nation. The nation, if you remember, is about your culture. Yeah, it's about the ethnicity, the racial side of things. Yeah, absolutely innate factor. But at the same token, if indeed it's built up and the landmass is large enough, and you've got multiple cities and you've created multiple states, them states then become one nation. So it's actually both. There it is. So neither one is wrong because they're both right. Therefore, and definitively, this means both nations and states are by virtue addressable by size, construct, and by number of populace. Yeah. So it actually has an ascending order. Yeah? Already on this image, loads of time frames in it, in different eras. Yeah? You can see them all coming together in the groups. It's just about different cultures, different eras and the political histories, all coming together. So usually around the time of villages being formed, you have started to create a gathering of people to make directional, be it current or future, decisions. We need to work out which form of leadership style we're going to grow with. So let's move this on. So we've passed through in the document over some additional elements that covers states and nations and legal definitions of them, which reinforces what the presentation itself actually points out, to move into principal functions of government. From this, with choice, and these are definitive, these are present, still present in some cases, yeah. But again, it's the choices that we make when we're building up. So sovereignty, be it monarch, shaman, or chieftain. We can use either of them three, because may be defined as the supreme or a permanent leader of the location, state, or a nation. To command and enforce obedience according to their autonomous or chartered will over the people within its jurisdiction and provide freedom and security from sovereign control. Internal power of the state to rule within its territory. External, the freedom of the state to carry out its activities without subjection to or control by other states and or nations. Yeah. You'll see this happening all over the world. It's people telling you, bug off. It's my country, I'll do with it what I will. But as development, as history has gone by, and based on, as we were saying, about corporate social responsibility or ethics, yeah, it's about the impact of them decisions. Yeah. So for our little country, we've got a choice: we want sovereignty, or we can have a look at a general government approach, which basically it is said and agreeably yet proven otherwise in the last decade. A state cannot exist without a government, but it is possible to have a government without a state. Yeah. Refers to the agency to which the will of the state or colony is formulated, expressed, and carried out. Sovereignty resides in all people, and all government authority emanates from them. Is the ability to reconcile two differences and promote long-term public good, also relevant to politics. It is definable as the power or the hub of the colony, state, nation, to manage its external affairs without direction or interference from another state. So independence is synonymous with external sovereignty. So basically, independence is effectively without the influence of others. Yeah? It's not without the influence of others. It's generally what that means. So we've got a choice. We can either go for a generalised governing system where everybody's up there, or we have the sovereignty. And as the quote goes, a government may change its form and staff, but the state, as long as its essential elements are present, remains the same. Okay? Effectively meaning it's an embodiment of colonial administrative practices, whereby the affairs of all the lands associated people needing public infrastructure, erecting and or repairing, as well as having services being provided, otherwise creates a safe zone for leadership, staffing. The latter mentioned administrative practices and or for the finding of settlement of varying disputes. So this is pretty much what it's actually amounting to. And as more time passed by, a lot of colonies have disbanded the idea of having one single permanent yet autonomous leadership, and have moved in the direction of elected government officials or leaders to assist the public with the everyday running of the country. It's a colony, state or nation, yet have instilled its own understanding of sovereignty as a means of legitimate legal identity and purpose. Security, so legitimate security. Okay, so for Nova Mundi, we are now going to call ourselves a nation of states. That is, to date our nation is constructed of 9 states with 8 outer and 1 central unit. Therefore, and by some long overdue agreement, we give each of our states regions their own hub, so a governing body, in which to work from, and build a national assembly or central government in the middle. Furthermore, as opposed to being led by a sovereign figure, we are simply and collectively going to be sovereign. So Nova Mundi's chosen a more commonly understood and accepted practice of having a central government, and the power has been dispersed. It has. However, any major decisions and all feeds back to the central hub as a nation. So the national interests are done through the National Assembly. So each one runs their own little country, their own little quarter, let's say, for argument's sake. But in the middle, you all gather together and mash it out and say, right, what we're going to do as a nation. Okay, so we now need to learn more about how our government system is going to operate. Therefore, what we do now is gather what we currently know about our growing system. Right? That meaning businesses, schools, and other educational institutions, community groups, families, and so on, all in a sense are non-government related unless we have built it or have collectively invested. That's our national assets. It is a place where all government authority emanates from the people, which is exercised by a representative chosen by the people. So this is what we've decided to gather together in terms of information and take it to our academics to be able to work on the science of it all, the emergence of politics. Right. Here we go. In its basic form, what we've decided to do now is learn about what needs to be done and how to do it. Who's responsible for what and why. Yeah. We've brought this information and understanding to our educational establishment. These tasks are now being mulled over with us. Through our other establishments, the people are progressively, as the information is coming out, agreeing to what is being proposed. So here's our 8 states, and there's our central government, our national administration, National Assembly. We will listen to a lot of the feedback along with our experiences and have decided on a particular method of practice in which the governing system will work, and we've called it politics. Sorry, so we're kind of taking a step back to take a step forward. So we're just playing. Right? There you go. So there's our states, and I represent on a national basis. So things are beginning to become structured now. So yeah. So it deals extensively with analysis of social habits and norms, the citizen, and governing or management systems and public services, attitudes and behaviour, ethical conduct and etiquette. Yeah? So effectively, what you've got now in the document is what politics as a science encompasses and teaches. It consists of social relations involving levels of and authorized authority level of power, and to the method and tactics that are permitted to be used. Limitations upon government authority. National and comparative politics, so for instance, business and society, in relation to politics. To formulate and apply policies. The state versus government. They are usually regarded as identical, as ordinarily the acts of government are the acts of the state, or the acts of the people. To discover the principles that should be adhered to in public affairs that eventually would serve as a model that can be applied to a matter of urgent concern to public officials and to private citizens. Running a government or state affairs, both internally and externally, so we're talking about administration and various other odds and sods. Government versus politics, which is the art of government. Citizenship and property. Public law. Organisation of governments, interconnectedness, power and duty of government office and officers, direct and indirect democracy, and giving you examples of the direct and indirect, leadership, service, a servant as in the public service, as a soldier would be a public servant also, elections and referendums. As we've stated, as such, politics is not the government. The government is a hub. So politics is not the government. It is the process in which the government works, and the government is the hub of the people. Government is the permanent fixture and a public asset with permanent staff, with politics being a variable method in which the government utilises and elects a proud individual plus office to lead and serve its people, as well as being responsible to them. Hence the reason why it shows us here's the hub, the apparatus within itself, and this is the method. Okay. Here you go. For examples. There are examples coming through. Here you go. Democracy is a method of political practice in which a government operates. Political ideology or philosophy is the aim and perspective of the political leadership. So what we've started to do now, for better understanding, for clarity of understanding, on the basic framework of it all is you have your country and its construct, as we've seen before, from a hamlet through to a city-state, through to forming a government, or rather a public asset, a hub in which all public society can gather as and when it needs to. That is then the actual connection point. Then you install your politics into it. And it's the leadership then that helps through democratic values and principles and their own philosophy, which people will elect based on whether it's suitable or not, to actually then run the country. So I jump into the car and drive the car, drive people somewhere, or a bus or something. Therefore, a government structure is not a legal entity, rather a facet to facilitate the need of the many, where only there is a need for the few to lead to reduce conflict and increase prosperity for the state and the nation. So the interest is quite literally, again, the government is a vehicle within itself. And it's not a legal entity. It can be recognised as one in the context of what it does, but in itself it is not a legal entity. It is relative to a form based on its people inside it, which are answerable to those who employ them. And again, public servants. Okay, moving on. So further sciences, based on the study of relationships. Now, for those who have a further interest in politics and science study, as a science study, we've provided you with quite a comprehensive list of practices for you to further develop your understanding of this skill base. As I was saying before, some of you might not find yourself within the social spheres, the academic spheres, or the faith spheres, or even the economics. So you never know, you might find yourself within the actual political realms. You never know, from exploring all of this, it might be one of the actual other avenues that come off of it, which is within the academic realms itself. So you may have overlooked what the academic realms actually covers. So now we're going to give you a bit more of an in-depth view on the other side of politics, which shows you what the academic realms do and its relative nature to society and economics, such as looking at history, economics, geography, sociology and anthropology, psychology, philosophy, statistics and logic, right through to social contract theory, as we mentioned in the previous slides, management, even economic and administrative development. All of these are contributory towards actually politics. You can even go deeper. However, the biggest part of it all now that's coming forward is ethics, also known as moral philosophy. There's a branch of philosophy that involves systematizing, defending and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior, which cascades from telling the truth right through to handling misconduct, which is attitude behavior. You've also then got human rights, so you're venturing actually into the law realms now. Everything from national, or as in the state, nation state, through to international law, right from ethics law, right through to contracts, etc. So politics within itself is a very broad field, if you want it to be. You don't have to study all of this to be a politician, just only come to understand the basic infrastructure of it all, and to understand, well, this time we'll venture into, or rather just touch on, a political party, and to remove, we'll be a bit self-serving on this one. I'm coming to understand the philosophy behind a political party such as utilitarian democrats. I say utilitarianism because basically it's more about the practical side of things. It's about getting the most out of something. Utility. But again, politics, understanding the philosophy behind the party of the politics. So what you've actually got is your citizens or your society. You've got your government and governments, and the central one. You've got your politics, how that government will operate, how the leadership is going to work. So that's the science part, that's the lifeblood of it all. The method, the practice, which in turn is democracy, and various other elements, recognition, and all that goes with it. And then what you've got from that is the party itself, or the leadership, which is then installed into that to actually make it all work, in whichever direction you wish to go. Is that leader capable of doing what it is the collective needs to happen, wants to happen? So very straightforward, isn't it? Now, even that within itself actually has divisions, has branches in it, whether it be research, right through to public media or PR, public relations, right through to the leadership itself, or the leadership's office. So there's a lot there that any one person could go into if they wanted to. So that's from the science element of it all. Now we could have broken it up further. We could have left it at that, but what we've decided to do is break it up a little bit further. So in retrospect, this indeed could simply be lumbered under the last section on political science. however, to separate the theoretical process from the pragmatism of day-to-day activities, it was thought best to create this separate section to better understand the planes of progression. Yeah. Politics, the process by which individual interests or desires, wants, etc., are reconciled with the collective action and for the provision of public goods. Yeah. Like I say, there are references in the end, and they'll take you across to other studies. On YouTube, there's an actual study, a class on politics, political studies there, so you can have a look in there for the basic principles of it. And as we've based here, principal functions, there's people, governance, politics, constitution, so the laws, the governance itself, as we were saying before, so we've got our land, we've got our hub, so we've got our people, we've got our hub, the constitution, and everybody's agreed on, the set of laws, and the politics to make it all work. As we see here, we've got a marketplace and our justice. So justice in the terms of law is an extension of the constitution, or the principal understandings or conduct of society, or what's been awarded to them. Yeah. The marketplace and that. So it's all one big jigsaw puzzle. It is. So we've agreed on both the principles and methods of practice. We have undergone our election process and have found our team to lead us in our country's endeavours. Basically, and much the same as the learning curve for politics, it doesn't get any easier and is to some still quite laborious. And on the other hand, quite boring. I have to admit, it doesn't wholly float my boat, to be honest, but as it was said, yeah, by Mahatma Gandhi, it's one of those that within what it is I have been doing for the last 6 years and developing up, well 7 years, and developing up to that point, the beginning in 2009, is something that I've decided to wrestle with. Right? I've learned a lot prior to that 6 years. All I've been doing over the last 6-7 years is refining it all. Yeah. I know a heck of a lot more, and it goes in much deeper than what you're presented with here, but even still, here's all the basics for you. Yep. So, we're basically looking at decision making. Yeah. So I move through this. So we're looking at decision making on a national scale with diversity in mind and direction understood. Otherwise, having a vision perceived or realised which meets public interest as a whole or by majority. Public policy development and or implementation. Remember, this is the actual functions of politics. It's the principal functions. International relations. Economic leadership with a view to increase national commerce. Prosperity and personal lifestyles, and so on and so forth. And rather than confining politics to a particular sphere, this view sees politics at work in all social activities and in every corner of human existence. In this sense, politics takes place at every level of social interaction. So effectively, it's trying to help societies move along. Large groups of people, let's say the whole country has decided we want to move in this direction, but it's going to be too much of a task for everybody to get involved, so it's up to the leader and their team, and then the broader governance of it all, to then come up with the ideas on how to actually make that direction work. Yeah. As is with the first within the policies, it's picked up, and policies are a collection of these different ideas. Or otherwise, it's maybe something that the leader of his team, his or her team, is picked up on and thinks that the country will benefit by it. Right? At its broadest, politics concerns the production, distribution and use of resources in the course of social existence for the benefit of social existence. So a nice tidy little paradox going on there. Politics is seen as a particular means of resolving conflict, that is, by compromise, conciliation and negotiation. Politics becomes the process of conflict resolution. Yeah. Administrative, to overcome procedural lag and inequality. Ecological governance, to ensure ecology of land and horticultural and husbandry practices are possible. So it's part of this being able to self-sustain, as part of being a colony, to be able to sustain itself. And then participation, the allowance or the permittance or the award or recognition of not only their participation within broader society, but it's also, as we were saying before, about society participating within it. So politics is the participation of two sides. It's a participation of everybody making everything work. Yeah. Effectively, it is the existence of political, economic and administrative authority in the management of broader societal affairs, either at a state, national or international level, and, as we were saying before, on a local level, to promote unity through common purpose. Whatever that common purpose may be. More often than not, and as we've been building up, the common ground is social affairs, and the fact that we're all looking for prosperity, safety and the rest that goes with it, but it's also through economics. So, common purpose. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Conclusion. And so I wasn't going to draw this out for too much longer. You will be able to see within the document there are much more, like dealing with the temporal issues. It's to be regulatory rather than controlling, enabling and facilitative. Yeah. So there's a lot more to it. Promoting gender balance, as we've been seeing over the years. It's progressive. I'm not saying that they've dealt with it, or rather should I say they've been successful at completing that task, but dealing with it. Yeah, this is as an example there. Within all of that, as you saw within the prior image, we've covered people, territory, government and sovereignty. Furthermore, in the first section of this presentation, we covered economics, leaving us with just a couple of loose ends to cover, such as what is meant by public and private, along with another aspect that all countries need. That's rules, otherwise orderly conduct, safety and security. Okay. Which then leads us on to these elements here. There's 9 in total. I work with 9 a lot because based on a first part and on a second part, it's because it's about transition, introspection. Yeah? It's about looking inwards, and that is a lot of what we've been doing. It's about looking into a country, into yourself as a world, within a world, and a perspective on the world. Yeah, so use 9 a lot, purely and simply because it works well for transitions and learning. It's about learning to then be able to move on to other things. So a part of the model, as you can see, people, politics, government, law, economic, security, society, learn and territory. These have been drawn from part 3, as well as part 1 and part 2. Yeah. We can also cover things like law as an additional part of the framework. Law and judiciary. According to Raymond Wax, 2008, the legal system lies in the heart of any society protecting rights, imposing duties and establishing a framework for the conduct of every social, political and economic activity. Whilst this is the case, and to keep things fair and equal without misconception, the law also has to abide by the same rulings it imposes on others. So there's no exceptions. Simple as. Right? A group of persons, more or less numerous, permanently occupying a definite portion of territory, independent or external control, and possessing a government to which a great body of inhabitants and this is the part, render habitual obedience. Yeah, so basically everybody's agreeing to a set of laws in which that land will work under. And then moves on to other examples. In basic terms of understanding, we all endeavour to achieve justice, promote freedom, and uphold the rule of law, and protect for security. The right is vested to, and it simply denotes that he or she, unless holding or presenting evidence to the contrary, will be the main and responsible person for their actions, and will be deemed accountable even at the most least end of the reasoning of law. The minimum usually refers to the safeguarding and perpetual or continuous preservation of your rights and citizenship, and are innocent until proven guilty. Yeah. And you can move on to things like security. The command nessus comes in two parts or two ways, being overt or covert. Yeah. Or you can break it down into 4 segments. Yeah. Moving on to that, public and private. Now, there are 2 tables, and what the tables do is break down, even though we've got people and society, people are usually is understood as individuals and in their individual exploits, so people in general terms of speaking, and society in the general understanding of social activity. Yeah? Society is a collective. Yeah? When you're talking about peoples and societies within territories, politics and government, and law is involved within economics and everything else, by the time you're finished, what we learn as we was building our land was what belongs to the public, as in people and society. Yeah. And then what is private, as in terms of people and economics. The tables define alternatives based on how it is you want to see it. By the time you're finished, underneath the alternatives is a public realm. It's the politics, it's the governance, the law in itself, commerce and security, works, services, arts, culture, and so on. The private is the personal realms, we're saying here. Yeah. So law and government is the personal and collective. Yeah. In the personal realms, especially when looking at economics, it's like limited companies, PLCs, not-for-profits, non-government organisations, proprietary and entrepreneurial business ventures, family and domestic life. Again, it breaks it down, and when you're talking about autonomous bodies, it's not lawfully deemed as being a public asset through agreed full or part ownership or partnership of government. Yeah. So there's loads of ways of looking at it, and there's 2 ways there in which to bring it all together. And in talking about bringing it all together, in general terms of speaking, there you go. There's the construct. As learned, all things have to start somewhere. Then as we have moved through, we see a pattern forming. There's gem forming. Yeah? Territory in the middle. There's people and the government. Politics, society. Security and economics. And also in parallel with each other. Yeah? Learning and law. And the forefront is learning. Because without that learning, none of this would be created. And again with territory slap bang in the middle to build it all on. We can then finish up by saying that learning is the foundation from which all emerge and law maintains a fair yet balanced growth. So, cycle. Once again. And there it is. The basics of both economics and politics. Welcome to your country. Yes. There are other bits and bobs in there. Political variations and alignments, moving from left to right, various other political skills based on understandings from the Greek to Islamic, rhetorical skills through to what is right, freedoms, from group unity to collectivism. I've put red asterisks in there because it's subject to state or national and constitutional agreement. And then you got a whole load of buzzwords to work with, both old and new age ones. Right? And then you move into the tactics. As I said, there's a lot of notes in there for you to actually work with and make yourself a nice rounded little package for you to then pick apart and then extend on as and when you see fit. Yeah. And there you go. And there it is. All 3 parts, series 1. You enjoy the rest of the day. If you have any questions, just ask.